That's better. Thank you. Well, good evening, and thank you for being here today, especially when the Venture Cafe is attracting a lot of people to be there and networking and all that stuff. So thank you to share with us this I don't know, it's evening. Thank you for Dr. Fratazzi for inviting me to share this day with you. My name is Sergi Trilla. I come from Barcelona. My background is I'm a medical doctor, went to the MBA and worked for the industry. And over the last 20 years, I've been devoted to business development for the life science. So Dr. Fratazzi asked me to talk about common mistakes in business development. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples and a few concepts, very important. I have this question for you, which is which I would like to discuss at the end. Just think about that during my presentation. Basically, this is one of the big mistakes that normally companies does, mixing, which is really the customers of our projects, no, of our technologies, our products, our company at the end of the day, which is something we will discuss at the end. So please think about that, and we can open the discussion at the end. So, which is the say that I'm talking about the common mistake, not mistakes, but only the most common one. It's mixing the concept of value. Everyone talks about value today, and at the end of the day, makes a complex answer. So, when a company, any of your companies, it's creating value. Basically, this value creation is focused on the product development. It doesn't matter if it's a device, or if it's a drug, or whatever it is. So there is a lot of focus and efforts on product development. And this is part of the value creation, which is fine, and it's part and it's necessary. But this value you create at certain point in time will need to be delivered. And this value has to be captured as well. So the part of delivery and capture of the value sometimes is absolutely forgotten during the development of the product. And people only think about product development and let's say value creation only linked to the product development. And that's one of the most common mistakes. And whenever you deal with venture capital, or whenever you deal with anyone else in the value chain that will sit down with you at a certain point in time, they will find out that you have very good work on the product development, but all the other values are not there. And then you start all the discussions about all the others, and then that's when the conversation or the language, it's different. When the next one in the chain is looking for the other values, and you cannot provide that because it has not been worked from the beginning. So that's one of the most common mistakes. If you see this slide, which basically wants to say from one idea to, let's say, a solution, I don't care about the solution, healthcare solution, in between, it's very important to understand that you have to go through this point. And this point means that someone will be selling the solution and someone will be buying the solution. Okay, so it's not all about that the patient will receive a solution and will be healthier and blah, blah, blah. So in this point, the complexity of our system or of our sector is that, of course, the seller is thinking about profitability, but the buyer has this problem, okay? Has to be affordable. And sometimes we talk about so many complex technologies and products that at the end are not affordable because really nobody took care about that. It's just go, and at the end I invest all that and I have to sell at this price. And that price is not affordable. But not only the complexity that the patient cannot afford that, we have, especially where I come from, a lot of health systems that are public. And the health system, when has to decide to take a solution, they have to go to a budget which is limited, and it's not growing over the last 5 years, and on top has an increasing cost due to the elderly population and chronic diseases like diabetes. So even if we don't provide anything, those systems are just directly going to bankruptcy. But even if we try to bring solutions, we have to take care about that. And also to understand that in our system, the user and the buyer sometimes are not the same. So who takes the decision about investing in a solution can be different from the one that is using that. So all these concepts that we all recognize, I'm pretty sure nobody is discovering anything in my presentation, but all these concepts normally are not incorporated from the beginning in a company that starts with a project. They only think about science, which is fine. But at the end of the day, science will arrive to the patient if there is profitability for the seller and could be afforded by the buyer. Okay? So that's the answer for the most common mistakes. Let's go to the case studies. So I have 2 case studies for you today. One goes about piglets, so because at the end of the day, production animals is also part of our business. Understanding, looking for solutions for healthy animal production that goes to the food chain, and at the end we have healthy lives as well. And the other one goes about this is about the vaccine for piglets, and the other one is about the vaccine for tuberculosis. So this company is a spin-off of the University of Montreal, just not far away from here, 45 minutes flying. And these people basically working in the university, Mr. John Fairbrother, which is called Dr. E. coli, was working in the university, and for the pig producers around Quebec area, they went there with an E. coli outbreak with diarrhea and all that stuff. So that people at the university start looking for a solution and find out an E. coli that has the same attachment factor without toxigenic effects. So they developed really a vaccine for this problem. So immediately, science, very deep knowledge in science, they look for a solution in the neighborhood to manufacture this vaccine. And they find out that in Saskatoon, middle of Canada, there was a Saskatoon Research Council with a contract manufacturing organization that could manufacture this vaccine. Extremely good, very easy to manage, local manufacturer, we can deal easily, blah, blah, blah. So they start up the company. Univalor was included on that. They got the CEO there. Everything was going very well. And they arrived to the market. They launched the vaccine. But of course, again, product, very interesting, but the market too small in order to make that profitable. So the VC behind this new company said, you should go to the big producers market. And the largest one of the largest one is Europe. And the advantage of Europe is that there is a strong regulation on using of antibiotics in animal production. So there is a key driver, market driver, that was supporting that. So they suddenly say, okay, let's go to Europe. And the first surprise was that the Saskatoon Research Council didn't have the GMPs that are required to go to Europe. Because basically the scientists decided that manufacturing plan because they were thinking on Canada. But they didn't think about the real future potential of that company and that product. So that small, let's say, mistake cost to the company $6 million and 5 years to solve. It's a very simple mistake, something that you can, from the beginning, analyze in your business model, deciding who will be your partner in manufacturing, thinking on your potential market. If they had done that at the beginning, immediately someone would say, be careful, if Europe is important, there the crazy people want GMPs as for any vaccine in human health. So this small mistake that you can take just by saying, hey, we find out the best contract manufacturing in the corner, it results to be a 5 years, $6 million problem. So it took 5 years to solve that problem, technology transfer to Europe, manufacturing in Europe, repeat all the field trials, and arrive to the market. So today, this vaccine is in the European market. It's commercialized by Elanco. They did a multi-million deal, and at the end, this company today has a value of over 100 million. So that was solved. The project is fantastic, but this mistake cost them $6 million and 5 years. That's one example. The second example, you might think I'm crazy, but that's a nice story about that. So the company is called Alpharma from my city, from Barcelona. They develop a tuberculosis vaccine, therapeutic one. Again, the beginning of the story, researcher from the one institute, very well-known, reputed tuberculosis investigator, find out a new mechanism. They build up the company. There was what we call a mecenas, so a person that was willing to invest quite a lot of millions on the development of this company. And everything was driven by passion, willingness to bring a solution to the market, to the tuberculosis big problem, and thinking that the latent tuberculosis affects to 2/3 of the population, so market is huge, and we will bring a solution, and this is the first in class, blah, blah, blah. They did all the stuff. By the way, the name of the company is linked to this. This is a small town in the south of Spain that is called Archibel, and the founder was born there. So they decided to take the name of the town to give the name of the to the company. And I will give you the end of the story whenever I finish with the tuberculosis. So they did all the process, 10 years, 20 million investment, okay? Went through preclinical. They built up their own manufacturing plant, owned by themselves. They did the phase 1, approved by EMA. They did the phase 2. And the problem is the indication they select. They select the latent tuberculosis because thinking that's the largest market. Okay, so they finished phase 2, and they said, okay, but we don't have money to go on. So now we need to transfer that to the big players that will be all waiting just beside the door. And they opened the door, there was nobody there. So they said, well, what we can do with that? And they came to us because we are specialized in that. And they say, okay, basically this problem is not the first world problem, it's a third world problem. So we don't have latent tuberculosis in our countries. And if we have, we don't have any problem because basically it's there, but nobody takes care. Most probably 5 of us will have that. But as our immune system is strong enough, we don't care about that. So only when the immune system gets down is when we have this relapse and all this stuff. So basically there was only markets like China, India, like this, that could be interested on this phase 2. Okay, so we took the phase 2, we went to China, India, we knocked a lot of doors and talked to most of the players. And the first problem, we don't care about your phase 1, phase 2. We have to do it from zero here. Oh my goodness. Zero value. So if you are targeting China or India, think that your clinical development has to be done. And that's just a validation process. You only need to ask before doing all the investment. First point. Second point, which is basically they did all the numbers thinking on the first world. So the numbers in the third world for this vaccine didn't work. Simply, there was no way of profitability for the company based on this market at the price that China or India can pay for that. Okay, fantastic. So which is the solution of that? So there was no possible transfer at this point with this phase 2. So the solution has been to go back to millions of euros invested in this direction. Solution has been to go back, redesign the clinical development process, select a different indication, which has been multi-drug resistant tuberculosis, and now they are in phase 2 with multi-drug resistant tuberculosis, and now there is a queue of companies waiting for that. But it was a matter of the right indication for the ones that can pay. Unfortunately, this is the rules of the market. Whenever you invest on a first world indication, then you take the money and make the development for the third world, and you will have your social impact. But to have a social impact, if that you're willing, which is great, but you need the money to arrive to the market. So if you want to arrive to the market and you don't have all the money, just plan what kind of indications can give you money to go to the other ones. So now this company is on that process. The anecdote behind the name is that sometimes the name gives you unpredicted opportunities. So one day, the owner of the company, which is now 75 years old, was on the news talking about that, because this is something that is regularly on the press in my country. And someone from this town saw the newspaper, and was a friend of the childhood of the other one. So he called him and said, my goodness, I see what you are doing. I would like to invest on that project. And that person brought the rest of the 20 millions to develop that. So sometimes, depending on the name you choose, something can happen. No? So the name is more relevant than things like that. So now the two owners are both from Archibald. So my conclusion for today in my 15 minutes is basically work always on your business models for the first day. Design your business models and remember that it's not one business model. You need to design a business model per asset and per market because every single market has different channels, different customer segmentation. So that's very, very important. And I would say that if you do that, you will not have the mistakes that we have already seen today. So that's all for my presentation, trying to fit on the time. And if you don't have any questions, if you have questions, let's talk about that. Otherwise, I would like to talk about the customer segmentation. Thank you. So, any question? Do you have any questions?
Well, I'd like to open with the question.
Yeah.
First of all, thank you very much for the presentation. It was very educative. Even someone like me who was pushing strategy. We're saying strategy, we are together. But you said that this needs to be done since the beginning. Mm-hmm. And I know nothing about business development or those kind of problems, but I fully agree. But I think my question is, does need to be reviewed during the process, and how often? Can you give advice on how often, and if there are milestones when it would be appropriate for a company to review the original?
For sure, yes. So the answer could not be other one than yes, yes, and yes. So it has to be reviewed because any business model, when you make your business model, basically the way to do that, you design your business model or business models. You realize that most of the points are hypotheses that you need to validate. You go to the market, you validate that. That's very important, the validation of the process. Otherwise a business model that is only theory is nothing, no value. So in the validation process, you grab a lot of information, and that helps you to redesign your business model as many times as you need. And whenever you have one that you start to believe on that could be the right one, then is when you can start with your company. But the business model is surrounded by market trends, macroeconomics, regulatory changes, and all that stuff. So continuously you have to review if any of your hypothesis that was validated at a certain point in time is changing or not. So you need to keep an eye on the potential changes in different aspects, from regulatory to market. So the story of the trends in regulation in use of antibiotics for the animal production, it's an example. So we still don't have this situation in the US. So in the US there's no regulation on that. And even a farm, what is called a farm, that today can be producing millions of pigs, but it's still a farm because it was a farm in the 80s, in the 18th century. So it's still a farm. Within the farm, they can do whatever they want by the US regulation. So they can take a vaccine and have a fermenter and produce as many vaccines as they want. This is by law, it's possible. In Europe, it's not possible. So, and also in Europe today, to use an antibiotic in animal production, you need to justify that. Here in the US, you don't have any regulation on that. So, I mean, these market trends will bring you to prioritize a certain market and wait for the others to continue with that, no? And that happens over the last 5 years. So for Prevtec was an opportunity that came because suddenly they discovered that was this market trend, and the European regulations were pushing. That's why they decided to go first to Europe before going to the US, and they are still not here. So the product is already in Europe, commercialized in 27 countries, and it's not in the US.
Oh, okay.
So that proves that you need to really always review your business model and validate really which are your customers, which is something that I want to discuss about the concept of the customers if you want. Thank you.
Thank you.
So talking about customers, sometimes people think that the customer is, of course, the patient, and most of us focus on bringing solutions to the customers. But the first thing I would like you to think on is that in healthcare we have paying customers and non-paying customers, okay? And non-paying does not mean that they don't pay the bills. That means that they are a customer, you have to consider a customer someone that can take a decision to let you arrive to the market or not. This is the right definition of a customer, okay? So a regulatory authority is a customer for your business model. And don't forget about that. It's a customer. There's no discussion. And you need to build up a channel, and you need to build up a value proposition for the regulatory authorities, which might be different from the value proposition and the channel to the patient, and might be different for the value proposition and the channel to the key opinion leader. And surely is different for the value proposition for the payer, because the payer wants to listen, we are going to save money with your solution. So, for example, companion diagnostics. Companion diagnostics proved to bring saving to the system. So why they are growing so fast? Because basically, if you do a proper diagnostic, you can select your, oncologic therapy, your cancer therapy, and then you save time, money, and you improve the life of your patients. But this is a clear example of something that provides savings. If you go to a health authority, you basically focus on efficacy and security, but you don't focus on reimbursement. But then you arrive to the reimbursement point, which are normally different people, and they don't care about that. They say, okay, yeah, of course it's efficacious. You wouldn't be here if it's not. But I have a budget, and then you want to put your product in my budget, prove me that I'm going to save money. And you might say, okay, whenever we arrive there, we will discuss with that. Oh, this is not my problem. This will be the problem of the industry. Sorry, whenever you sit down in front of the industry, they will do this analysis. And if they don't find the savings or the arguments to have a price, they will not care about your product. So when you do your business models, remember that in healthcare, we have a lot of different customers, and we need to have a different value proposition for each one. And also a channel. That means a specialist that is able to talk to that concrete customer. Or even the patient associations are customers in our case. Okay? Well.
Very good. Thank you very much.
So that's all from my side.
I have another question.
Oh, for sure.
How can you said that you need to have a different value proposition for each one? And
yeah.
This is correct. I agree. I know it's correct, but I feel the same way. And that's what we are trying to do when we build our strategy, right? So from a strategy point of view, because we are doing, I can see how combine the different voices to create a common strategy. From a value proposition point of view, how can you consolidate all these different aspects in one value proposition?
Well, and the answer is that there is no single value proposition.
Okay.
So at the end, of course, in general terms, you will think on improving the health of the population. Of course, this is the common one with different mechanisms. But at the end, every single customer has a different need. Okay. So you need to satisfy that need. And you cannot play with the same terms, because for the payer, it's budget. For the regulatory authorities, it's safety and security. For the patient, they basically want a solution to improve their health. And for the key opinion leader, want something that makes him bright and it's interesting. You know, there's a lot of key opinion leaders that, depending on what you knock the door, they are not interested. Say, this is not for me. And the patient association wants to make everyone aware about the problem. So if sometimes you don't have a value proposition for all of them, but you might need of that. The global one is always improving the health of the population. But when you go deeply, you need really to segment the different customers you have and how you are going to bring value to you. And that's very important when you design a protocol for a phase 2 or phase 3. If you don't introduce pharmacoeconomic issues, at the end of the story, you will not have a story for the payer. So remember, when you design your protocols, I don't know anything about protocols, but I know that if I don't have the proof, I cannot even convince the pharma industry to take that. So when I'm in one way selling your technologies to the pharma industry, I need the efficacy and all that stuff. That sounds very good, and this is necessary. But I need other issues in order to convince them that there is. So I think that the most important slide for today is this one. Remember, profitability and affordability. That's the two concepts. So if you ignore that in your development, sooner or later you will find a wall in front of you. Surely. So that's the point, and it's about business. I didn't invent that, and I'm a medical doctor, so I would prefer that solutions arrive to the patients and not taking care about the cost. But unfortunately, it's not the case.
Thank you again.
Okay. Thank you very much for your time.
Can you?
Sir.